Now we're going to talk about William Carlos Williams. I admit he's one of my favorite poets of all time. He is considered an imagist, along with his friend Ezra Pound, who was a very strong influence on his work and encouraged him actually to get published. He did not like Eliot and Frost and their portrayal of America. He felt like Eliot was too disjointed and did not like Frost for his nostalgic representation of an America that really he felt like never existed. He experimented with meter and lineation, especially if you look at Patterson. He wanted a fresh and American poetic. He speaks as an American in an American context. He's concerned with the everyday and with common people, the working man. And as a doctor, which he was, he saw the everyday people and their hardships and their woes. And you can also feel in his work, especially with his shorter lines, his tighter lines, that shows up because actually he wrote quite a bit on his prescription pads, which are very short. He also had a typewriter in his doctor's office that he would type on in between patients, and then they would come in and he'd put the typewriter away, and then or he'd write on a prescription pad when he was out and about. He also coined the phrase "no ideas but in things," and he says that in a sort of song, which is actually in your book. So you can expect to see a lot of things in his poetry. I think that's especially apparent in the poem, which most students have read before they get to college, The Red Wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. That's just an image. Yet when you start picking the poem apart and looking at the lines look like a red wheelbarrow, and resembling the image they're attempting to present in this simple language and experimental line breaks are very apparent in that poem. As I said before, he's very concerned with imagery. He was very interested in the visual arts, especially avant-garde painters and the cubism. As you can see here with The Great Figure, that is a poem that actually came after his poem, The Great Figure, which is a poem that he wrote about an incident in his life. Then, of course, we also have some poetic ekphrasis in his work with pictures from Bruegel. As you'll see in Blackboard, I've posted a session there where he wrote 10 poems that were based on paintings painted by Piotr Bruegel the Elder. And you see an example of one right here, Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. Icarus's legs are right here in the corner. We don't actually see Icarus fall. This is a picture representing Icarus falling here. It's after the fact, and as you notice, the ship is sailing away. The plowman, the farmer, has his back as well as the horse to Icarus. No one has noticed this tragic great event. Even the little fisherman down here is looking at the water rather than at Icarus. And if you read the poem, as you should in the book, you'll see that it's a very short poem, yet with very simple language and short lines. The tone and image of the poem conveys a very interesting concept regarding the nature of this insignificant event that was very significant yet insignificant because no one noticed it. The Great Figure is not in your book, so I've included it here. It's called The Great Figure. Among the rain and lights I saw the figure 5 in gold on a red fire truck, moving, tense, unheeded, to gong clangs, siren howls, and wheels rumbling through the dark city. And as you can see, this is a very specific moment, like a snapshot moment in his life. He actually experienced this, and the lines themselves, the way the poem is written, you can feel the approach and passing of the siren as it gets louder and then moves farther away. You see the figure 5. The painting was painted after this poem, based on this poem, and you see the cubist influence here in the way the multiple squares, the multiple 5s. We have the lights here from the city. We can see his name buried there, Carlos. And then the 5, from smaller to bigger, as just reflects the way the gong clangs and the siren howls would seem louder, and as the wheels rumbling through the dark city, this moment of intense noise, and then we go back to the solitary figure alone. So in Paterson, which was his very long poem that was published in 5 books, it was about his native city, and William Carlos Williams, like Wallace Stevens, was a modernist, and it's Paterson, the piece, the work, is now being collected in 1 book, and each book, each of the 5, were a collage of textual fragments, such as poetry, letters, even one to Allen Ginsberg, who he was a strong influence on the Beats later, in newspapers. And in this poem, he established the triadic, or the stepped line, which is similar in some respects to the Red Wheelbarrow. And you get a feeling of that, actually, if you take a look at Death or The Wind Increases. You get a feeling of that triadic, or the stepped line, that is very short and stair-stepped out from the beginning to the next line. So he's a very influential poet. He's very tied to the imagery because of he's very fascinated with things. So the image was something we could get, something almost tangible to him that he felt was important for us to understand. And you can see as well the influence that he had on painters and that painting had on him.